really happy to be here today. I wanted to start this conversation about why minimalism is not just a trend, it is truly our human nature. But in order to talk about this topic, we have to start by addressing privilege. Billions of villagers in India do not need to hear this talk. In fact, none of my neighbors in my village need to hear this talk. They're already living minimally by necessity, by very real economic constraints. So if you listening today have all of your basic needs met, and in fact beyond, to the point where you actually feel burdened by the excesses in life, then what I'm going to tell you is not something that you should do or can do, it's something you must do. Because we do not live on a planet of finite resources, and there is no magical world of away when our junk that is clogging our homes goes away. We have to talk about the privilege of education, the education that allows us for decent paying jobs that can afford a certain lifestyle, and maybe even forms of passive income in the stock market or with technologically savvy folks, many of whom will speak today, that can actually have passive income that is not tied to our labor. So then if we're hearing this and all of those things are true for us, you must listen up, and this change is a necessity. Now, it's not our fault, though, that we are consuming the way we do. Modern consumption habits are constructed and contrived with enormous and conscious effort by industry and by media. This has been happening since our infancy, we've been marketed to, and been going on for many generations. So it's no surprise that advertising makes it their focus explicitly to direct us towards the superficial and thus the insignificant parts of life. These are called created wants, where it's not truly something we need if we're applying our own self-regulation, but it's something that the media has fed us subliminally and also intentionally, so that is a created want of ours. What this does is it skews our own conception of self and our own self-worth to not be around how we're connecting to our community or how helpful we're being, but instead, how many of those created wants we can satisfy with the money that we're earning. When our self-worth is skewed towards these insignificant superficialities, our ability to satisfy our creature comforts, then it's no wonder we start to feel isolated from each other and in fact, separate from nature. The great catch-22 of modern life in a world of so much comfort and excess is that we really do live to work, and then we work to earn, and then we earn so we can spend. And we're caught in a cycle of earning and spending without even really zooming out and coming to understand what we're spending it on or why we're doing that. We must fundamentally question this system that encourages limitless growth in a planet of finite resources, that convinces us that our human nature is the constant drive to fill our own bodily pleasures, when that is not our true human nature. Our human nature is that we are independent, creative, generous, free-willed beings. And we have dignity and self-worth. We desire work of importance, and we're connected to the whole. As Vandana Shiva so aptly reminds us, the way we design the world in our minds is the way that we relate to it in the real world. So for a capitalist and consumer system to thrive, that design must be one where the world is dead and inert, where it is just a lifeless base of materials that can be transformed into goods to feed our own bodily pleasures and creature comforts. In that kind of a design, we truly are separate from nature. And when we're living separate from nature and that design in our mind, then we feel vindicated in taking and for consuming just for the sake of our own pleasure. With that vindication, it's no question that we will exploit the resource base. If instead we shift completely and we remember and we enter a design of deep interconnectedness, a deep interconnectedness to nature, between all living things, then we will make the choices that nurture those relationships above the choices that satisfy our own created wants. So let's explore that a little bit with some everyday items. Let's take the example of a packet of masala crisps, some masala masti that we can get at our local Kirana store. In the former design, that's the dead, inert, separated from nature one, then that masala chips packet It's quick, it's easy, it's delicious, it's incredibly inexpensive, and it gives our body pleasure. In India, so much of when we eat fried food, we even just call it time pass. So why wouldn't we buy that? I mean, yum. In the latter design, actually, I look at that product of one that is chemical laden, disease inducing, food like substance produced by a behemoth, wasteful, and extractive multinational, upon whose purchase my dollar leaves my local community off to some faraway CEO. It trashes my neighborhood with its plastic packaging, and later it's likely to disease or kill one of my animal brethren who will eat it in the streets later. So in the former, if I switched those mindsets around, then wouldn't it be so easy just to take my reusable container to my local hot chips guy where he's frying fresh bananas or fresh potatoes that causes no waste and also keeps my money in my local economy? Let's take another quick example, maybe a 300 rupee top from H&M. So in the former design, that's the dead and inert disconnected design, then that top makes me feel attractive, makes me feel stylish and on trend. I fit in with my peers. It gives me confidence. I feel good in the workplace. And you know, that added Lycra is really good for the extra stretch and comfort. But in the latter design, the one of interconnectedness and relation, then that piece of fast fashion, which is churned out on 6-week cycles of new product, actually represents thousands of liters of toxic wastewater that goes unfiltered and untreated into my rivers and that kills all of my aquatic brothers and sisters. That added extra Lycra is a petrochemical, which then when I wash it, releases microplastics into my water stream. It comes back down in the rain. We drink it. It's in women's breast milk. It's everywhere. So again, looking at the design, that item doesn't become so innocent anymore. And couldn't I very simply go buy 1.5 meters of hand-spun khadi fabric for about 100 rupees? I could go get that stitched from my local tailor for about 200. And then with just a little bit of creativity, I now have a garment that suits my personality much better than anything I'm gonna find on the shelves at H&M. So we have to change our design. We have to change the way we are designing the world in our mind. We have to remember our inherent interconnectedness. We have to remember the earth as our mother and her creatures as our brothers, as our sisters, as our ancestors, which is just what our indigenous populations have always and still do. A very good place to start, my friends, is to turn off the television. There is nothing that you need there. And we have to remember the capabilities of our ancestors who all made things. That memory still lives in our hands. It's not very far off. That memory lives inside of our hands. It just needs a waking up. So let's get to some tangible changes, some behavioral changes to take on a minimalist lifestyle. Very first off, we spend less money. This is maybe even the most simple change. Again, I want to point out the privilege of this conversation. If we have the option to buy so much that it's burdening us, then this information must be heeded. So if we have income coming in and we are not spending it out, we have more money in our pockets. When we understand this equation about money, more money in our pockets means less pressure to work in a wage economy to earn that money back, to fulfill this certain lifestyle that us and our friends have set about how much we need to spend. In time, with more money saving up because you are not spending it, it means that one, you can go on great adventures like myself and the other speakers in today's TED are talking about. It's because we have not spent money on items. We have saved it and bought flights with it. And you can employ this rule of a 1-week rule. So if you're about to make a purchase, right? And you feel this excited, burning, butterfly rising desire inside of your body, I encourage you to take a deep breath, take a couple deep breaths, and then wait 1 whole week. If 1 week later, you still have that burning desire to buy that item, then you are justified to do so. Most of the time, that excitement will fizzle out. You'll go about your life and you'll realize that you really actually don't need that item. Because the less we spend, the more we have in our pockets, which takes the pressure off of wage economy. It might even allow us to do other jobs that are more creative, that fill our spirit more, but that might pay less. And we all do that because we spend less. So one of the best ways to spend less money is to upskill yourself. We are many generations into jobs where we sit in front of computers and we've forgotten how to use our hands. So we need to upskill ourselves in learning how to cook. Cooking saves you a lot of money. As you get better at cooking, it also allows you to host way more fun dinner parties than you could ever have at a restaurant out. We also need to learn to ferment things, to jam things, and to brew things. These give us lots of options. They give us one option to take produce that is going to go into the waste stream, maybe that's getting old and soft carrots in our refrigerator. Instead of throwing those away and thus throwing our money into the bin, we can ferment those into a delicious, crispy, probiotic snack for our family, and that harvest can be extended. It also means that you can take harvest from either middlemen selling at the mandi or straight from farmers, all that produce that might go off, and you can make it into something that can last for months and months to come. You can avoid the liquor store altogether when you learn that all you need is some simple yeast in order to brew delicious beers and delicious ginger beers. And we need to upskill ourselves so we can make our own products again. We can make all that we need in order to bathe ourselves, clean our home, make ourselves clean our clothing, make ourselves look beautiful. We can do that all ourselves. Just as I'm sitting in front of you today, I have washed my hair with chickpea flour. I conditioned it with yogurt. My eyeliner is made out of, and mascara is made out of an egg yolk and charcoal. And my bronzer is cinnamon and cocoa powder. All of these things were already in my house. I didn't have to go spend gobs of money for them. And we need to grow our own food. Now, growing our own food is not complicated. It is, again, an ancestral memory of being a human being on the earth. And we don't need anything special to grow it. As we eat food, that produces food waste, the chilka. The leaves fall outside of our apartments, and those are falling everywhere we live. So if we take the food waste from our home, plus the leaves from our neighborhood, and put those together, add some time and some air, we have compost. From compost, we can grow food. What do we grow it in? Well, that takes me to the next point of learning to upcycle things. Before I get there, one last thing we need to do when we upskill is that we have to start getting creative, artsy, musical, thinking about all these lush activities that we can do that are outside of the rat race system now that we have all this extra time on our hands. So it takes us to upcycling. We must develop an allergy to waste. Once we have developed this allergy to waste, then instead we will see these things around us as resources, and you realize how much resource is actually out there. We can upcycle any old plastic container to grow food. I mean, anything. You just need to put in some drainage holes. We can upcycle old curtains into shopping bags. We can upcycle milk bags, the little milk tailies, into rugs. Have you guys seen this on YouTube? We can take old saris and uncle's old dhotis, and we can make those into fresh threads. The bonus about the upcycle life as well is that it gives you a moral freedom on the items that you're going to use. There's so much junk that we can craft into something creative and useful. And if normally in your life you wouldn't go buying plastic or lycra because of their petrochemical bases, well, when you're taking it out of the waste stream, you get a moral get out of jail free card to do that. And this minimalist life is best done in community. We need to find community. That means we can buy things in bulk. We can share tools. You want to get a tool that is quality and is going to last. And a tool allows you to make a great many things. So if your community invests in tools, then you can share those amongst yourselves. It also means that you have a network to exchange goods and expertise in a barter economy that is not cash-based. And many hands, of course, they make light work. So when we're creating and making and not just consuming, it's not only more fun, but much more efficient done in community. So to close, we need to redesign our minds. We need to remember the inherent interconnectedness of all of us. It's something that, sure, we can forget it, but we cannot escape it or avoid it. This is nature. This is the rule of nature. So you are not just a consumer. Your nature is not one of selfishness, of greed, or of blinder-like focus on fulfilling your own bodily comforts. You are a free-thinking, generous, creative, and interconnected being. Your choices do matter, and the path of minimalism ends up being a path of richer, lusher, much more vibrant living. Thank you.